At a recent seminar I was teaching in Minneapolis, I had a discussion with several people actually about the problem they run into when they're trying to select someone off of a background and they get a bit of a fringe or an edge that shows up there. So I'm going to kind of revisit this topic, having not done this for a while. So I'm going to attempt to select them so I can take them off their own layer. A very quick way to do this would be to select all, so Command or Control A, and then hit W for the magic wand. By the way, I'm in Photoshop CS3, but of course this works equally well with CS2, and all I'm going to do is hold down the Option or Alt key and click to remove the parts that I don't want from my selection. So I just keep clicking. Now, normally I'd worry a whole lot more about this area down here, but we're really going to focus our attention on the upper part. So just to save time, I'm not going to worry about trying to select all that part down there, because I really want to, I'm almost trying to deliberately get even more of a noticeable edge than you normally get. So then I press Command or Control J to pop it up on this layer by itself. Of course, you can't really tell that until I add something more in. So let's add a new layer below our current layer, Command or Control click on the layer mask, and I'm going to fill it with my background color, which is red. Command delete on the Mac, Control backspace on Windows, just so I can see more clearly the problem. So now that we've done that, let's zoom in to full size so we can really see, and that's what we're talking about, that little bit of a fringe or edge that we see very noticeably there. So first thing I would suggest we're going to try is, anytime you can try anything automatic, why not? So now it goes right outside my filming area. At the very bottom of the layer menu is a thing that says matting and then defringe, and it brings up this little dialog box, and I would suggest that you try a width of 1, maybe 2 pixels if it's a higher resolution photo, but not too much more than that. Click OK, and you see that's got rid of a lot of the fringe, so we might want to stick with that or not. I'm going to undo it so you can really see the effect, but I would often try that. Even if you defringe 1 and it gets rid of some of the problem, then we can take it a step further. Now we're going to move on to manually getting rid of the rest and trying to help it blend in with the background. By the way, let me pause and say that you'll notice when I was making the selection I did not feather it, and that was a very deliberate thing I did, because the problem with feathering is it picks up a little bit even more of the background color. So we're going to kind of do that after the fact. So I'm going to select the folks on the layer here, Command or Control click on the layer to select it, and then I'm going to go under the Select menu, Modify, Contract, and I'm going to contract it. Now normally I would probably contract by just 1 pixel, but for the purpose of this movie, to make sure you can really see it, I'm going to contract by 2. I would suggest normally 1 is probably enough, although you could, I suppose, try 2. And if you look real closely, you see what that's done is it's made my selection, as the name suggests, contract by a couple of pixels. So now I have just everything in them of the 2 people selected except for that very outside 2 pixels. Now I'm going to do under the Select menu, Inverse, and now when you think about it, I have the opposite selected. All I have selected now is that little 2 pixel border all around the outside. Now I'm going to use a shortcut here, Command or Control H, to hide this selection, otherwise it's really hard to see what's going on. So at this point we have several options. The first option would be simply to hit the delete or backspace key, and sometimes that does a pretty good job, but sometimes it's a little too much. It makes a little bit of too much of a hard edge. The second option would be to blur, but I like to do one thing in between, and that's to do what's kind of a, for lack of a better description, a partial delete. And here's how you do that. Under the Edit menu, we're going to choose the Fill command, and here's where it's a little odd. Instead of filling with a color, I mean, we're going to leave that, but down here, the blend mode, this is the important part. We're going to change the blend mode from normal to clear. Now, clear is like saying delete. So right now that's like saying fill using delete, or another way of saying press the delete key. But the difference is I can now delete a certain amount, like 50%. So when I click OK, it will partially delete the pixel. See, you can just barely see it there. It's a lot less noticeable. We undo. There's before. Here's now. So it's better than it was before. And of course you could try different percentages. Then the final step would be to go to the Filter menu, just do a little bit of a blur, and when we say a little bit, I mean a little bit. That's too much. See how it's starting to look like a bit of a glow? So I'm talking like less than 1, just a little tiny bit, and we can see the effects. The thing to remember here is defringe is a great command if it's on a white background or a black background, but if it has a little bit of various colors, this method works really nicely because it's not based on the color, it's based on the area you've selected. Now one last thing, remember a number of steps ago, I pressed Command or Control H, and it's still on there. So right now that means I still have a selection, you just can't see it. So if I press Command or Control H again, it comes back. So anytime you use that hide edges shortcut, just remember that you did hide the edges. So at a certain point, you either want to show them again or deselect to get back to this step. So there's a couple little suggestions for you if you're having trouble with picking up a little bit of fringe when you select something off of its background. Now there is another strategy you could use completely different than the one I just showed you. If you put your object onto a separate layer and you're thinking that the edge looks a little bad, just add a really giant outer glow, and that way it'll still look bad, but then people will just be distracted by the ugliness of your outer glow. So you could try that theory too. Maybe not. I'm Dave Cross. See you next time.